Epstein would say it flat out, the younger the better, and the more that you would allow him to do to you, the more that you would do to him, the more money you would get. Everything about him feels so mysterious, and the people who are still alive and around to tell his story are not willing to say the full truth. And here's the thing, there's people that deserve to be talked about as often as this guy is. He is not one of them. With all this new information coming out and everything about Epstein that's currently on the headline news, I thought we would do a recap just so we're all on the same page, so we all understand what's going on, what kind of guy we're talking about here. I do have a full deep dive on my podcast linked in my bio if you haven't listened to that. That episode is 45 minutes long, but today we're just going to do sort of a recap on who Jeffrey Epstein is. Jeffrey Epstein was the eldest of 2 children. His mom was a stay-at-home mom and his father worked for the New York City Parks Department. The family grew up in a neighborhood called Seagate in Brooklyn, New York. And ever since he was little, Epstein was smart. He loved numbers. He loved math. He did good in school. He liked school, and he had a very clear vision for his future. Simple goal: to be successful and to make a lot of money. He graduated high school in 1969. He went on to one college, then transferred to NYU. He was there for 3 years and left, never finished his degree. At 21 years old and with no degree in 1974, he became a teacher teaching math and physics at the exclusive Dalton School in Manhattan. He wanted to work there, to teach there, because the wealthy kids went there. He wanted to have access to them. He wanted to make connections to America's wealthiest families who sent their children to that school. And 2 things stand out in regards to his time there. One, that students always claimed that Epstein paid more attention to the female students and was really creepy and weird around them. But 2, that his intentions of crossing paths with wealthy people worked, because it was thanks to one of the students' parents that Epstein was able to land a job at Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns was a major American investment bank and financial services firm. Epstein then worked as a trader and financial analyst at Bear Stearns for 5 years. Then, when he was around 27 years old in 1981, he left to go do his own thing. And what exactly did he do? In simple terms, I guess Epstein claimed that he was basically a wealth manager. He helped rich people manage their money, manage their finances, but he was always sus, because remember I said he was always very book smart, but he never got a degree. Somehow he was able to get his foot in the door just by making the right connections, but sus, because he never had an office, he never had a list of employees, a client list, or any official records of investment for that matter. He did that for a couple of years until 1988 when he launched his own consulting firm, J. Epstein and Company, and one of his most prominent clients there was billionaire Leslie Wexner. Leslie Wexner was the founder of a business empire, the business empire that owned Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, Abercrombie & Fitch, etc., etc. He's still alive, actually. He's 87 years old, and according to Forbes, his net worth is over $9 billion, billion with a B. So Jeffrey Epstein starts managing his money, but he doesn't only benefit from that, he also benefits from the status. And then all of a sudden, Epstein is seen hanging out with the wealthiest of the wealthy and is often seen in these elite circles. And what does it mean for someone like Jeffrey Epstein to be buddy-buddies with Leslie Wexner? Well, it meant that he now had an unusual access to Victoria's Secret and Victoria's Secret models. And it's around that time that Jeffrey Epstein then starts bringing in girls from all over the world, all over the country. I'm talking 13, 14, 15-year-old girls with the fake promise of making them Victoria's Secret models. He would lure these girls in under false promises, at times moving them into his houses in New York, his house in Palm Beach, his house in Paris, and New Mexico. And he would use them for his own pleasure. He would ruin them and he would drain them from everything that they were. Fast forward to 1998, Epstein is now in his mid-40s when he purchases his private island, Little St. James, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which he liked to refer to as Little St. Jeffs. The island itself spans from 70 to 78 acres, and he reportedly bought it for $7.95 million. He buys it and basically gives it a makeover, building different cottages all throughout, adding a swimming pool, multiple swimming pools, tennis courts, importing 40-foot tall palm trees, a private helipad, you named it. Everything that you can think of was on that island. He also hires staff members on his island for literally anything that you can think of, and his staff members would later say that one of the weird things, because a lot of weird things happen on that island, one of the weird things is how many underage girls were seen constantly coming and going. Some of the pilots said that underage girls were seen routinely flying in and out of the island. But Epstein, his staff members, and the girls that he was routinely flying in and out of the island, it does not even begin to cover how much traffic the island got. Because Epstein would also invite his friends there, business partners or acquaintances, whatever, and for what reason, we can't be certain, but we can assume. And based on some of the flight logs, allegedly, we know, or we can assume, that some of the people who visited the island at one point or another included people such as Bill Bill Clinton, Michael Jackson, Rupert Murdoch, Leslie Wexner, Courtney Love, Janice Dickinson, Ted Kennedy Jr., etc., etc. Ghislaine Maxwell, she was also a person who frequented the island. She was Epstein's supposed girlfriend, but she was basically his right-hand woman. And one of Ghislaine's main jobs was to recruit and essentially manage the girls who were brought onto the island. She would coordinate all travel to the island and then manage their schedules, which meant scheduling massages that they were to give to Epstein. And those massages was just something to call them to cover it up for what it really was. And what it really was full-blown SA. Ghislaine Maxwell was born in France, and she was born into wealth. She was a billionaire's daughter. And I'm talking wealth, like money. Like her childhood home had 51 rooms, if that tells you anything. She grew up attending lavish parties, big events, fancy dinners, galas, grew up around politicians and celebrities, the whole thing. But then in 1991, she lost her father. Ghislaine's father mysteriously drowned off the coast of the Canary Islands after falling from his $15 million yacht. Weeks later, their house is mysteriously burned to the ground, and shortly after, it's discovered that her father had been stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from employee pension funds. And in Ghislaine's eyes, her life in London is ruined. The reputation is ruined. So in 1991, she moves to New York with the goal of finding the life that she is used to living of luxury and power on her own. And she puts in a lot of effort into gaining status in New York, which honestly doesn't take that much effort because she had a lot of connections. For example, she was good friends with Prince Andrew. She had connections. But anyway, she throws herself into this world of the rich and famous and powerful, which eventually lands in her path crossing with Jeffrey Epstein's. And we know for a fact that the two of them were in a romantic relationship, but sooner than later, Ghislaine became Epstein's go-to who would help him with anything and everything, including recruiting girls under false promises. It was a common thing for Ghislaine Maxwell to be out and about looking for girls for Epstein. She would basically shop around for girls, shop around for victims, and then she would approach them and play this sick and twisted game of kind of like a big sister or motherly role and say, oh my god, you are so beautiful, you have so much potential. How would you feel about becoming a Victoria's Secret model? I know just the person who can make that happen. And by the way, it wasn't always becoming a Victoria's Secret model, because they had this little sick and twisted routine of selling victims different dreams, whether it was paying for their college, offering them their dream job, their dream internship, or introducing them to the right people in any kind of industry. Whatever lie they needed to say to lure these girls in, they would say. For example, one of the victims was an aspiring massage therapist, and Ghislaine offered her a job to provide private massages to Epstein, and that led to traveling to Epstein's private island, Little St. James, where she was later SA'd. They would tailor their story for each victim, and more oftentimes than not, they would target girls who were in some kind of need or want for money. And then Ghislaine Maxwell would manage to get these girls to one of Epstein's properties until eventually they got wrapped up and began this regular schedule of quote-unquote massages for Epstein, and one thing led to another, and the girls would be SA'd and treated like nothing more than a piece of trash. And they would be left with nothing but trauma that would last a lifetime. And by the way, this happened in all of his different properties in all different kinds of the world, as well as on the island. In